Huh.
Oh yeah, we'll be creating artifacts. Welcome one, welcome all. Charlotte, how you doing? Welcome to the
Fine, how are
party.
you?
I'm doing great. We're gonna jump right into impromptu networking. So I'm gonna hustle you and Eric off into room 1. And our invitation for today is an old idea worth revisiting. And away we go. Biplop, welcome.
Hi, Jeremy. Thank you.
Welcome to the party. Kemi, welcome as well. We're going to jump right into impromptu networking, and our invitation for today for our first conversation and all subsequent conversations is an old idea worth revisiting is ... So an old idea worth revisiting is, and Biplop, I'm going to send you off into room 2, and Kemi, I'm going to invite you into room 2 as well. An old idea worth revisiting is, Claire, you get to hang out with me.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Pleasure.
So sorry, this is the first time I've joined, so I just sort of I've come more with just an open mind, and hopefully I can add to the discussion. But yeah, so
Cool, awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on into the fray. So what's an old idea that might be worth revisiting?
well, I was actually looking at idea generation the other day, and De Bono's 6 Hats.
Ah, okay.
Remember
the thinking
that?
hats, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I'm just thinking actually to sort of think about physically changing hat and kind of shifting the way you think about a problem is actually quite a good way of taking a group through a process, because we all get so stuck in our kind of linear way of thinking that it's really good to interrupt it. So yeah, I thought when I was reading that the other day, actually there's some real validity in that.
Totally. Well, it looks like we've got somebody else joining us, so that'll put you into a subgroup, and you can, John, welcome to the party. We're jumping immediately. Oh, there we go. Hey, John, welcome to the party.
Hi, sorry for being late.
No worries. We're jumping right into impromptu networking. So I'm going to invite you and Claire into a breakout room. And our invitation to kick things off with is an old idea worth revisiting is, so that'll put you and Claire in breakout 3. I'll see you guys in about 5 or so minutes. Robert, what is up, guy?
Hey, Jerry. Good, busy. I just came back-to-back meetings, so awesome.
and yet here you are, a road warrior, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, we got everybody else in breakouts for impromptu up until the 10-minute mark. So if somebody else comes, I'll hustle you off with them. Otherwise, you can kick it with me and get settled in.
What do we do today? Is the Wise Crowds today?
Yep, Wise Crowds. Every other Monday but the first, we're doing Wise Crowds. And the prompt for impromptu this go round is an old idea worth revisiting.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I have something for the Wise Crowds, so it's cool.
Cool. Well, it looks like Frederick's going to join us. That'll give you a subgroup to get into impromptu. Frederick, you hear us?
Hello, I can.
Awesome. We're jumping directly into impromptu networking. So I'm going to hustle you and Robert here into a breakout. And the invitation for this go round is an old idea worth revisiting is, so an old idea worth revisiting is,
Thank you.
and we'll see you guys at the 10-minute mark. Welcome, Adelina, right?
Hello, yes. So is it the two of us?
No, everybody's off in impromptu networking.
Ah, okay, I am late.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody's been hustled off to make friends with one another.
Okay, yeah, sorry to be late. I was just looking my credentials, installing Zoom, all this.
Oh yeah, getting yourself
Yeah.
set up.
I started a new job last week, so this laptop
Ah.
is all new.
Right, right. And thus all of the plugins, the struggle is real, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, Adelina, our invitation for the first round of impromptu networking is an old idea worth revisiting is, anything come to mind? An old idea worth revisiting.
An old idea was revisiting. Wow.
Well,
Mhm.
what jumps out at me is actually my first gig. My first career was in sales and account management. And that was a lot of what I like to call beating concrete, just out there like hustling, go beat the concrete, go walk and go find on people and knock on people's doors and be like, hi, I'm Jeremy. This is what I got. You need any of that? And that feels like an old idea worth revisiting for me right now, as I'm in the middle of trying to start up a few new things. It feels like a lot of knocking on doors and poking people and go, hey, I'm Jeremy. This is what I'm up to. Hey, yeah, would you like to buy?
Ah, okay. Oh, very interesting. Are you in the agile direction?
Yeah. I do business agility over at Accenture. Shout out to the team, Solutions IQ.
I see. Okay. Ah, very interesting. It's my turn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, old ideas. I'm actually digging up in my brain for old ideas from when I was beginning Scrum Master, and I was bumping with my head into management in the company where I was working, because they wanted change, but they didn't want to change, the old story.
Everybody, right?
Yes.
I just want everybody else in the world to change, and that way I can be happy without having to do anything. Right?
Yeah, all these people, they should all change, of course.
Yeah.
It will be fine. Yeah, but now I'm group leader and I will be working with some Scrum Masters. So I'm revisiting the idea of what is a group lead that can actually help Scrum Masters. What would they do?
Yeah. And
I
so
have
how does this idea of wanting everybody else to change apply to this new space for you?
Yeah, well, of course, I have to be part of the adaptation. So I also need to change. It's the first time that I'm not really the first time, but I'm new in this role and I have to adapt. And I think this is different from what they expect the role to be, maybe. So it needs to be defined. So then I can, yeah. I need to change also. I'm very much aware of that because I was always Scrum Master product owner. So I was always the one
Right.
wanting things. But now I'm on the other side now. So I have to.
Right.
So I want to help them in the change, but I have to also find my place there. That's good to relate. I'm not sure if that's what you expected with the question, but yeah.
It's something. It's all right. We're just getting to know each other. We're all friends here. I can dig that. I also find myself in a very new space that I didn't expect to be in not too long ago. So as I embrace that sort of how else can I just, the only way I can describe it is like the absolute certainty that I will fuck up, right? Almost like everything, everywhere, every time for like the first like dozen times or so is I notice I while I can laugh about it after the fact, it's a sensation that I definitely go, but I don't want to.
Yeah, of course you don't want to, and maybe you shouldn't. You also should be careful. What I noticed, I was always embracing failure and saying like that's the best way to learn. But yeah, you also have to be careful with these things. You shouldn't. What I realized about myself is sometimes I was pushing myself in this more than I was actually, more than was healthy, because there is a comfort zone, right? And you want to be out of it. But if you're also so far out of it, it can become destructive actually.
Sure,
So
sure.
if you can really frame, like really, truly, honestly frame the failures as learnings, then it's great. But sometimes some failures are hard to take actually.
For
So
sure.
you should at least protect yourself. That's what I'm telling myself. I'm not sure if it would apply to you, but
No, I
my
can definitely get behind the sense of, you know, if I push myself too far, I end up in a place where I sort of like I give myself either a micro or a macro trauma, right? I give myself something that makes it actually harder for me to adapt versus being in a nice sort of happy middle space where it's like, ooh, this is challenging and it's not going exactly the way I wanted, but all right, we're learning stuff and I can cope with it.
Yeah.
All right. And it looks like everybody is snapping back from those breakout sessions. So welcome everybody. See, you guys are not the only two in this meeting. So there's other folks showing up. Welcome to the March 14th edition of this Wise Crowds design call. I'm gonna switch up. Actually, as a matter of fact, I am gonna exchange a fistful of folks, and so that you can meet somebody new, and then we're going to jump right back into this impromptu networking one more time. And I guess there is a question with Adelina. Adelina, why don't you jump into breakout room 3? And John, if you hang out with me here in this session, then we'll be all evened up. So let me make sure I change the timer because we will not have quite so much time in this next go round. And 5 minutes with a 60-second kicker should do the trick. No, I don't want to delete room. On your mark, get set, race. So Adelina, you should be able to see breakout rooms down there on the bottom. It should
Wait,
pop.
I see participants already. Okay.
Okay. Yep. And then if you jump into room 3, we'll all be squared.
You said that you wanted me to stay with you, but I've also got an invitation to join breakout room 3.
Yeah, I'm too dumb to figure out how to turn that off. So if you just ignore that and hang out, we'll be all square.
Okay.
So John, what's an idea, an old idea that's maybe worth revisiting?
Yeah, I talked with Claire about it, and for me it is to remember the intention of when joining a meeting with a relation, that being curious. I have this poster in my bedroom that my love is unconditional, your action is relevant. So recently I've been under humongous pressure at work, and I had a tendency of forgetting that phrase, making me less curious about why the other people at the meeting has an idea as they have. Their definition of what good looks like.
I get that. I can definitely get into my type A, like I'm going somewhere, folks, right? You know, I got ideas. Hold on and listen to me. I'm going to let John into our conversation, our new joiner, and he'll jump into the fray. So for me, the thing I was saying about an old idea, hey, John, we are in the midst of impromptu networking. Our invitation is an old idea worth revisiting is, and I was just about to tell the other John here, that's, oh man, I noticed that's destabilizing a bit. But I was telling John that there is this notion of like, so my first gig was, my first proper job was in sales and account management, business development, stuff like that. And this idea of out beating concrete, going and knocking down people's doors and seeing who's interested is an old idea that I have fallen out of love with, but I have a feeling that we should be much better friends than we are as of late. So that seems particularly relevant as I'm sparking up a few different initiatives to go, like, rather than playing it soft shoe and be like, well, who's interested in this thing that I'm doing? Be like, no, I want you in the party, and I want you in the party. Come on, you want to come to the party, so to speak. And John with an H. So, what comes up for you when you think about an old idea that's worth revisiting?
Well, I came here really to listen to what other people were doing and saying rather than contribute, especially as I was 15 minutes late, which I apologize for. So that's not very good. So I was just hoping to slip in and listen to what you two were going to talk about. So
well,
rather than jump into the conversation. So would that be okay if you just continue and I listen and I absorb, and then if it comes to a point where I can contribute?
Well, John,
okay?
for this exercise, impromptu networking is we're going to have a series of different one-on-one conversations. So while you slipped into the midst of this, the second conversation, we're actually going to spin you out into yet another breakout room where you'll be offered this same invitation. An old idea worth revisiting is, so that space that you want to occupy, while it might be more appropriate in the second half of the session, so to speak, when we do the design portion itself and respond to a help request, there's for sure some value to be had to hanging back and seeing what goes on and what the vibe is like. For this particular exercise, it's kind of a no spectator zone. So.
Oh, okay. And that's actually what I wanted to know, because it looked like that from the invitation that you had to come with a kind of an issue or something that you wanted to discuss. So if it's a no spectator thing, then it's probably appropriate that I'm not here.
Not for the design call itself. It's not required that you have a help request. For this exercise, this is just what we call impromptu networking.
Okay.
And so for this exercise, we're just in a one-on-one space, just trying to make friends, so to speak, and warm up into the space of interaction. But if you want to hang out, that's cool. Then we'll just hang out.
So is that okay if I stay, or would you prefer me to leave? Okay, I'll hang out.
Cool. And to be a punk about it, when I asked this question, an old idea that might be worth revisiting, what jumps out at you?
I guess I don't really know enough about the question. When you say an old idea, is that to do with my work or my life, or?
Yeah, so this invitation is literally not really much of a question. It's just sort of a prompt. So an old idea that is worth visiting is ... And this comes from the oblique strategies from Brian Eno. So
okay.
It's
I mean, certainly personally, I revisit old ideas.
We were talking.
Ooh, a lot of people here.
There we go. Yeah. Welcome back from round 2. And you'll be probably not particularly surprised to recognize that we're going to do this yet one more time. So that's the way impromptu networking sort of works. And let's see. So Adelina, I will move you into room 5-ish. with our friend John here, and you'll be able to jump right into the fray. So if you end up in a breakout room with somebody you've already had a conversation with, you have all the agency in the world to find a new partner. And on your mark, get set, race. An old idea worth revisiting is. There we go. Awesome. So that is what I like to call a flying start into impromptu networking. Instantly into the mix and into the fray. And I find it a nice way, just, I don't know, just much better than this. Everybody sit around and feel awkward as we're all kind of on mute and in this big room of people that we're not really familiar with. So yeah, impromptu networking. And if I think about this invitation, an old idea that is worth revisiting. Yeah, for me, if I take it all the way back to like my 4-year-old self, the ideas that are worth revisiting are like rap music, like hip hop, dance, and like playing in the woods. Like these are the oldest ideas I ever had. Like running around with a gang with my friends and building forts in tall grass and then swampy woodlands, stuff like that. Hmm. Hmm. How funny. Welcome back, gang. All right. So the flood comes. Well, welcome once more to this March 14th edition of the Wise Crowds Liberating Structures Design Call. My name is Jeremy. I'll be hosting this madness. And I appreciate everybody for jumping on into the mix. In the chat, you'll find a link to a Google Doc that we'll be using for our storyboard in yonder help requests. Just to be super clear about the intention for this space, what we're going to try and do is field a couple help requests from us as a group about a meeting, a workshop, some form of work session that we have to plan and figure out how we might be able to use liberating structures to respond to that, and perhaps even design a prototype of a string. And given that we're how many 10 people in this call, we will have both a silent and an active subgroup, I imagine, and we can rotate out because we should be able to get to 2 help requests in the coming hour. To do that, we're going to make use of this structure, Wise Crowds. But before we get into that, I want to go over an invitation for each and every one of us, depending on where we're at on our sort of liberating structures learning journey. On what I believe will be the second page of that document, you'll see a visual for the liberating structures development phases. And so basically this just says, hey, what's your familiarity with liberating structures? Are you in this despairing cynic phase where you're not really familiar with any of these things? Like what are these folks talking about? Are we in the cautious optimist phase where we're maybe familiar with a fistful, 5 or plus or minus 5? Or are we in the sort of rapturous super user where we've got 15 or so in our toolkit and we're really getting the feel for these things? Or have we moved into the space of a maestro minimalist, familiar with the whole toolkit of liberating structures and able to sort of move through the world with and through them? So for each one of these development phases, wherever you find yourself, I'd like to invite you into a particular sort of membership role, type of activity that can help us out regardless of where you are in your learning journey. So for the cynics in the house, if you would help us, and this is always really hard, but if you can challenge the orthodoxy and or assumptions that we might be making, wherever you see them, where you go, if you ever have that nagging feeling of, I don't quite know about that, this thing that you assume to be true might not be true. If you can just point that stuff out to us, that would be super helpful. For the optimists in the house, there will be a tendency, you'll notice, for some of us, myself especially included, to talk sort of inside baseball. And so when you notice that we're using lots of jargon or we're throwing around terms that you're not familiar with, it would be super helpful for you to ask for clarification so that we can make sure that everybody is getting value from this interaction. For the super users in the house, there's a pretty big ask, and that is, especially in response to these calls for clarification, please step up to the plate and try and explain the things that you're not quite sure if you've got it 100%, but you think you've got the basic gist of it. That'll help add some new voices so that it's not just me explaining everything all the damn time, and it'll help give you some reps in explaining how to use these structures and maybe the conceptual frameworks that we bring into this space. And then for minimalists like myself, we'll try and make space for other folks and build on what everybody else brings into the mix, so to speak. So if you would do me one favor, and that is probably already done by now, just take note of where you are in that growth hierarchy and step into that role. And on the page underneath, you'll see a guest book. If you want to put your name on the guest book and your email address and your phase of that Liberating Structures growth hierarchy, that would be plus or minus awesome. I'm also in the midst of a really cool, well, I think it's cool experiment with NFTs. So I'd like to send what may be many of you your very first NFT non-fungible token. It's a whole thing. I don't want to get into it right now, but if you're at all interested in all this action around Web3 and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, please leave me your email address and I will send you a participation NFT that says, hey, I was here for this March 14th edition for the Wise Crowds design call. And you can just have that and do whatever that thing does to let folks know that you were in fact there. So with that being said, let's jump into the proper mix. So we're going to make use of this structure, Wise Crowds. Did anybody bring in a help request that we can respond to? Awesome. Robert's got one. Anybody else? Charlotte's got one. Eric's got one. Cool. John's got one. Sweet. So we have options. Well, first let's run through the structure and then you guys can play rock, paper, scissors, or, by on the energy of urgency that's within your body that can help us self-organize which one we'll jump into first. So Wise Crowds, you'll see there's a visual for it on about the 5th or 6th page. We're going to try and play with a tighter time box so that we can get to more of these things. And that'll be both an enabling and a challenge for us to get to concrete recommendations in a narrow window of time. So what the client is going to do is explain quite briefly what their design brief is. And it's very helpful if you can give us some sense of what the place or context is for your design brief, the purpose or outcome you'd like to accomplish in that meeting or workshop, and the participants. And then of course the nuts and bolts about time and who and where and what, whether it's online or an offline activity would be helpful. So in about 2 minutes, the client will share their help request, and then the consultants, whoever's left in the call, will basically ask any clarifying questions. And we're going to try and time box this to 3 minutes just to be super rigorous. So so that we can generate some additional information. And then the client is going to turn off their webcam and microphone, but importantly, listen to the conversation that the consultants are then going to have in order to generate our advice. And go ahead and take notes. The consultants will take about 8 minutes. 8 minutes is going to be tight. Maybe we'll have to stretch that one a little bit. But we're going to take a few minutes to then, just discuss what pings for us, what structures jump out into our mind as we hear this help request, and how we might design a string out of those structures to address that help request. And then the client will come back and turn on their webcam and microphone and say, gee, guys, that was awesome. This really gives me a huge insight. Or they will say, wow, that really didn't do anything for me and lets me know that I really, maybe the thing I need is actually not the thing I need at all, or thought I need at all. Any of those is good. That's good feedback. And then we'll move on to the next. So does anybody have questions about the nuts and bolts of how these things sort of fit together for the structure? Going once, going twice. All right. Then between the visual and my succinct explanation, our clarity is blinding. So Robert, Eric, Charlotte, and John, I haven't run into this problem before, so I haven't thought about how to solve it. So do you guys have any insight about who should jump in first?
I mean, I could defer mine for a while. It's not that urgent, so I can do it next one, next meetup, or it might be another one. So I'll let the others go.
And I'll second that. So I'll withdraw my proposal.
Okay. So Charlotte, Eric, I can't hear you. Is that just me? Nope.
Oh,
Nothing.
maybe we can both
tell our story in one sentence and you can choose?
No, Eric's disqualified himself by his lack of microphone. So I believe, Charlotte, that is a self-sorting algorithm from the universe that is just taken place. So you can go first, and Eric, I'm sure, will sort himself out.
My sunscreen is going down, so you won't see the dots anymore. But yeah, there I am.
Oh, that was a pretty cool effect, I gotta admit.
Well, I have a question about a team building design. There's my team exists of about 50 people, and I wanted to design a meeting and where we talk about safety and trust. And yeah, the goal is well, there has to be some team building, and also there will be a motivation to work on this, on the trust and the safety of the team.
All right, that was super succinct. Did you say 15 or 50?
15.
15. All right, that changes things.
Yeah.
All right, so this is in a context. I guess my first question. No, actually, let me shut up. Clarifying questions.
50. 50. Yeah.
Wow. Right. 50. That's a lot of people. Yeah. So I guess I have a question about what your relationship is to the 50 people in this context.
Well, I am the person that I coach and help people in their work, how they can do their own work better, and how they get more impact in the work they're doing. My organization is an organization in a governmental organization in healthcare, and we develop healthcare standards, and there are all kinds of projects to improve stuff that's going on in healthcare. And my role in this project, it's a project management team, and I improve all meetings and also the projects. I advise my colleagues in how they can do their work better. So I also give trainings. I organize workshops about leadership and about facilitating and networking. But now this team existed last summer, and I think that it's a good step to work on safety and trust.
Okay. And I guess I'm also have a question about the participants themselves, right? That's a big group of folks. So am I correct to assume that this will be everybody within a specific project, or is this a collection of people across contexts?
Yeah, well, actually it's four groups. It's project leaders, project management. How do you call it? They supporters, the project management supporters, the BIers. They tell about the figures, the numbers, and it's also a different group that's with their own project. So this group exists of project leaders, project supporters, and experts on a specific topic. So
okay. So these 50 people don't share one context, but can be found
yes.
within an ecosystem of lots of different.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I already started with some super, how do you call it? Intervision, is that an English word?
Yeah,
so that they
peer-to-peer coaching, right?
Yes, so they can exchange their experience and knowledge with each other, because they don't have their own connection other than this, that they have the same sort of work.
clarifying questions? Nope, Eric,
See,
still down, buddy. Frederick?
Oh, I thought Eric. Okay. Well, I guess Eric, until you get your microphone working. So you said that you wanted people to meet to talk about trust. And I was wondering whether this was a deliberate wording or whether this was just an introduction of the topic, because I remember this guy who writes books about coaching, life coaching. And he was sharing in a podcast how we needed to be very specific and cautious about the goals we were setting because we could achieve them. And 1 year he set to understand how to make $1 million. And he said at the end that it was funny because he had understood by the end how to make $1 million, but he hadn't, right?
oh,
So similarly, I wanted to know if you wanted them to talk about trust or if you wanted them to build trust or to do
Yeah.
anything else with or related to trust, and to be very specific about that.
well, I want them to build the trust. And my assumption was that to give them some tools for this, then there's a basic for it. But maybe I'm totally wrong. Yeah.
I could come back later, but Eric, is your microphone working?
No.
No, no.
You speak
Really?
really softly. Maybe I could figure out what you say. So,
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Aha.
I'll just do it like this. And I've got studio speakers in my room, so I'm going slightly deaf right now. But my question was, why safety and trust?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think that's a good base for building a team, but maybe, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering, because usually when people want to look at safety is because there's some kind of crisis. So that's important.
Yeah, well, that's a good remark. These people, not everybody was happy with the choice of the team they're in now.
Ah.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Can I, John? I see you have a hand up, but I don't know if Jeremy, if you're hosting the questions.
for
Yeah.
Get some clarification going.
I just go for it. So if you picture those 50 people and you take the 5 most powerful people in the group, not by role, but by verbally speaking, and you say, what would you like to talk about in a workshop like this? What is your current problem? What is your current wishes around a close to future? What would they address as a topic that could be addressed at this workshop?
Do I have to answer that now, or is it just a suggestion? Because that's really a different approach. I think there are some dominant people who.
Maybe I'm asking, this topic, was that selected by you because that's what you think and believe would be beneficial for the crowd? Or is it the crowd's request of you taking this topic of safety?
Well, last week I I talked with the team about where we are now and what they want to be the topic on the meeting. And they said the answer was that they wanted to work on their communication, how they can find each other, how they can know better what everybody's doing. And so that was the answer. I see one hand and I see somebody who's waving.
I'll go quickly. I got two questions. So as it's a government department, I'm assuming it's a hierarchy.
Yes.
Um,
I want to
and-
get rid of this, but yes.
but that's the facts, right? And then are they really a team, or are they people that, in other words, would you seriously call 50 people a team, or are they people that just interact with each other?
Yes, no, they're not a team yet.
But will
I
they,
don't know if it,
so will they ever be a team? You know what I mean? Because there's 50 people working together doesn't necessarily mean they're a team.
well, I hope it's possible, but I'm not sure. I hope if we create an environment where we can talk about what's on our minds, and we have some, more meetings and over the year, then maybe we find each other a bit better. But now it's actually are 3 or 4 different groups of people in one team.
Okay, thank you.
Last call, Frederick,
Frederick.
you have the honor.
Yep. Did I talk over anyone? No, okay. So integrating what John and Claire said, I would be curious. This is not a direct question. This is a, let's say that we both walk. Sorry?
But it might be better to wait to save this for the consultation if it's not a clarifying question for Charlotte.
I apologize. Thank you. I apologize. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thanks. And Kemi?
I just wanted to ask if there is a way you can split the team into, because right now they're huge. And if you look at communication, that would loop, it's huge. Is there a way you can split them up?
No, actually not. Only randomly just make 2 groups of random people and later put them back together. But this team is a fact.
Okay.
And the last but not least, how long are you thinking about for such an extravaganza of team building?
I'm sorry, how long do I?
Yeah, what's your time box that when you think about doing some team building for a group this big?
Well, I wanted to, well, there's a about 3 hours to start.
Okay. Then that's our constraint.
Coming back to the goal and the team and their different priorities or perspectives, aspirations. Have you explored what topics, not only what topics would be dear to the people who want to come in, because communication is, it's a how, it's not a what we are going to achieve. And have you made a deliberate choice to discuss trust, to improve trust, versus discussing something that is going to reveal a lot of things about trust and lack thereof, and will be a good ground to actually work on trust?
I'm going to pause this right here for, in terms of clarification, I don't think we're going to get any additional clarification from Charlotte at this point. I think we have a lot of information to work with, enough at least to come up with a prototype of a string. So I'd actually like to invite Charlotte to turn off her webcam and microphone, and that we just get into the nuts and bolts of the consultation itself. So
Is it, can I add some, because I don't know if this is completely following the rules. But my question was I wanted to do something about trust and talk about it, but it's just if you want to talk about, because Frederick gives me all new ideas, just something for team building to start with the basis, then that's the question. How do you start with the team building meetup, something? But maybe I'm making it more difficult now. So maybe I have to just turn off everything. Yes. Thank you.
We'll see what the information you've
Yeah.
given us so far does. So thanks,
Okay.
Charlotte. So
I mute
and turn off your webcam. Exactly. So the invitation to us, crowd of wise consultants, is when you think about this help request, what are the structures that come to mind that you think would be really helpful to help generate trust and do this team building thing? And then how might we string them together? So whoever wants to start starts, and whoever wants to go next adds in their 2 cents.
I think 50 people is a lot of people to have as one team. Whether they are, she wants to say one team or not, there are multiple groups of people within that 50 people. So they are naturally working in silos because people gravitate towards who, one, they are working with, two, maybe same occupation or personality and everything like that. So people will gravitate. And to build trust, you need to kind of like start small and then scale it versus trying to build trust across 50 people. And in addition to that, because I did a bit of, I'm doing some relationship and system coaching. When 2 or more people come together, there is always the third entity there. So you have to look after that. So you can just imagine having 50 people, how many relationship that is going to come out, and to build trust. It's huge.
Thank you. Anybody else? What structures come to mind that might be helpful to help develop relationship and trust?
I always like the Troika Consulting. I find it a very effective way of creating trust.
I'm just curious how she would do that because it takes time, right? It still involves having to have people split, and I don't know. Can you tell me more about how she will use that for 50 people?
It's the advantages of Troika Consulting is that you give the group a chance to self-organize into groups of 3. So that's an interesting way of exploring what you were referring up to the subgroups. And then what I really like about Troika Consulting is that with 3 people, there usually is someone with a question, and just the structure, it forces people to listen, to focus more on the slow thinking, and make people aware of each other. And it's less about the problem the client is discussing than listening to each other. And that, I think that's the value of the Troika Consulting.
Is it okay if I ask something? Eric.
Yeah, sure.
I've never really used Troika Consulting myself. And I'm now just reading. I'm an optimist. It's hard for me to imagine like what kind of consulting question would people come up with. You need to give them an assignment. So how would you turn it into something about safety is what I have trouble imagining.
Yeah, that's I think Claire could probably think about an interesting subject context, but I find that simply asking people to think about any given problem that they're running into, that it triggers something. I've never really had a Troika Consulting where people were at a loss to find the subject, and it works really well with really big groups.
I think what comes to mind with that is using 2510 to gather questions and then narrow it down. Yeah.
I'm kind of also thinking that the group is not necessarily one group. It is probably only 50 people that refers to the same line manager. And for that reason, I think before going and talking about safety nets, it could be leaning into vulnerability, etc. It would be good to land what is the common denominator. And if the common denominator only is those 2 or 1 leaders, then a celebrity interview would be a good thing of starting out, so that they all listen into what good looks like in this group, what is our goal, maybe even what's our numbers, and where do we want to go, and how do we fit into the rest of the organization. And then after that, it could be a conversation cafe where in smaller groups, they are pondering about what was shared at this celebrity interview. And I'm still
Claire.
challenging if she's actually designing what the crowd wants. And if she's designing something that is against the wish of the crowd, then it's going to be a tough 3 hours. So perhaps, and that's not part of a liberating structure, perhaps having a pre-conversation with the strongest egos in the group beforehand, so that she at least would have those on her side, because else she can risk that the first 5 minutes is going haywire. I tried that when I once had a session, let's create a high efficient team, and then the crowd did think that I thought that they were not high efficient team, and then they were against me, and I got kicked out nearly of that session. At least we didn't came out stronger when we went out of the group, the workshop, before we when comparing to when we joined the group.
What I like in response to that, quite briefly, might be something like TRIZ. So in order to bring in that shadow side of what could go horribly wrong if we try and think about trust. Claire, did you have something to jump in?
My gut feeling is that there's just been an assumption about what a group of people need.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of agree with John. It's kind of about if communication is the issue, what's the reason for the communication? So, you know, is it because they're not communicating and they're not getting their work done? Is it because there's power and control issues, because it's a hierarchy, and so people aren't getting the information they need to get their job done? Or is this purely about, on the positive side, what could improve communication? What mechanisms could be put in place to improve people's ability to do their job better? And do you necessarily, again, need to be a team, or do you just need to be a colleague that respects the requirements of someone else? I'm sort of struggling with the purpose of the workshop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think from my perspective, if I look at this, I think we're grappling with indeed the context of this all, and I don't know that we fully understand what's going on in the organization, and that does make it quite hard for us to kind of judge what is helpful or not. Assuming that all those people do have some kind of interconnectedness in some way or form, that does necessitate the need to make sure that they work together, whether they're a team or not. Maybe that's also for them to figure out if they really are a team or not. That's not for us to say to them. So I probably would have directed in that way to see, okay, how do these connections to people work, and what do how do people interact with each other? And I'm not too familiar with this, but I was thinking of maybe something like a social network webbing to kind of make those communication flows these connections visible first before we really do anything else, and then see, okay, what are we talking about here? Is it indeed what people suggest here, that it are maybe different kind of groups of people who work together, or are that, is it maybe situational, that in one situation these people need to work together and another situation you're working with somebody else? So get that insightful first, and then see, okay, what, based on those connections, what do we see, what makes sense to do? So that might be an interesting one to start off with, to at least get some insight into what's happening, because 50 people is indeed a lot. I agree with you. And I probably would not consider them a team under the real strict definitions of what a team is. But yeah, make those connections insightful.
You mentioned, sorry, I thought you were done. I was just going to ask if she mentioned the amount, the time, the duration that she needs to.
3 hours.
3 hours. Okay, thanks.
So time enough for something like this, which is only an hour.
So I don't know that we have unpacked social network webbing. I've done it a couple times. Does anybody want to jump into the fray by helping us unpack the mechanics of that structure?
Yeah, I've never really used it. I'm just reading the description on the website. So
good, that'll do. Then you're close to the source of truth. Give us the game, Robert.
All right. So basically, okay. In physical space, you need a big open wall, tapestry, flip charts, etc. So you create key groups. Use 1, 2, 4 for that. Involved in co-working planning group. Okay, so you create groups, and you use 1, 2, 4 to create names for that, and then you go into the sequence, create elections of all key groups in the network needed to achieve your purpose, and assign a posted color with symbol for each. This is not a simple one, by the way.
No, it's kind of big. Maybe I'll help
yeah,
out.
maybe we can drill it down a little bit.
Yeah. So for social network webbing, what you're literally going to do is create a network map of the people, right? So you're literally going to visualize the web of relationships that link people together. So like Robert was saying, you'll start off with like your sort of legend of what the topography looks like. How are people sort of grouped together, perhaps in their functional silos, perhaps in project teams. The group will come up with their however they think makes the most sense to do that. And then everybody puts their name on a Post-it and then places a Post-it effectively in this map, in this 2-dimensional space. And then you literally draw lines to the people that you interact with the most in your day-to-day operation. And based on that, you're going to create an artifact that is basically going to show, okay, so who else, who am I communicating very well with, so to speak, and where are the relationships that don't exist right now? Maybe you'll notice that there's a whole silo, there's a whole project group that you just don't know anybody or you're not communicating with, right? And then, so the whole purpose is to create this artifact and then have a conversation about what you notice for yourself and then what you notice also from a group's context as well about what's going on, and then come up with some strategies on how you might, weave the webs of relationship together, so to speak. So I definitely +5 that one. It was the first one that pinged in my brain as well. So thanks for surfacing that. Another structure that could help us address this question as well about is this the quote unquote, is this a appropriate or right topic, could be critical uncertainties. So critical uncertainties is also a bit of a big one, right? Use the group in a 1, 2 for all to identify the factors that are the most critical to their working together and the most uncertain about their working together, and then put those on a 2x2 matrix, you know, positive criticality on one side, negative criticality on one side, and then you have created 4 quadrants, so to speak, that define a context. You know, so each one of those quadrants, we would do a little bit of sense making around about, okay, what does it look like if I was dropped out of a helicopter and I landed in this context? What would I see, hear, and notice that would let me know I'm in this type of environment? And then come up with some shorthand description of, hey, in what can we call this quadrant, this type of context, just so that we can not have to explain it every time to everybody here in this room. And then develop some form of coping strategies about, okay, so we're dropped into this quadrant, you know, what are we going to do to survive? We can't, you know, we're in this reality where we can't create some grand architectural scheme and change the context. But if we're there, what is going to be the actions that I as an individual agent can undertake that's going to keep me alive and healthy and sane? And then for each one of these quadrants, you'll effectively give not only the group a map of where they might be at in this most critical uncertain phase of their working together, but to also give yourselves some way of thinking about when you look back, when you zoom out and look at these coping strategies, you'll notice 2 particular types. You'll notice what we call resilient coping strategies, and they pop up all over the place. These are the things that we should always be doing, so to speak. And you may also notice what are called sort of hedging strategies, coping strategies that are very specific for one context, but could make a big difference. And in a way somewhat similar to discovery action dialogue, which could also be a good structure. I notice it's a good way to surface sort of, hey, this is how we think might be good to navigate through this uncertain environment. And I noticed that we are crossing the hour mark, and we've got another participant joining who's probably might be confused from daylight savings time. Let's see. Oh no, that's John. That's somebody else. At any rate, John, you had another input, and then we'll bring Charlotte back to give us her 2 cents.
Yeah, it was very much in relation to the previous discussion that we had. Instead of only having this social network web thing, which I don't know before this conversation, but when browsing through it, it very much looks like constellations where you can use the people in the room placing themselves in a maybe 2-dimensional, how close are you to the customers? How much power do you have? And also stand yourself in a relation to whom you're working closest with, and then see how the physical people move themselves in relationship to the others. And if this constellation very quickly lock itself, then everyone in the room agrees about whom is their closest collaborator. And there might be that within this pretty large group, that there's different viewpoints about who is my closest collaborator. Then this constellation will keep trying to settle itself, and that itself might be an invitation for a dialogue regarding how do we work, whom do we communicate with, and then finally a discussion about a safe environment and trusting each other.
All right, so I think if I let me just try and do this, synthesize this. So if we're talking about 3 hours, if we do have the right goal, I like this idea of starting off with a celebrity interview to say, hey, you know, you're the reason we share this context. So come on up and tell us a little bit about it. And then jumping into Conversation Cafe to perhaps make some sense out of that. I could really see a big benefit coming out of either something larger like social networking network webbing for really making these relationships explicit. And I also think this way of visualizing it with our feet could be really very interesting. I would want some way to capture that. Like if there's somebody up, get a drone or somebody with a super long selfie stick, or have a photographer, just so that we can have some artifact that we can take a look at and sort of gather around and go, is this the way we might like it? And then I think as well, thinking about that challenge about, hey, how do we generate relationships, so to speak, could be a really good, could be a very interesting sort of framing into something like Troika Consulting that says, hey, all right, now that you know who you don't talk to, you might want to develop relationships, pick those people in particular to get into a coaching circle about, and get some give and get help going on. It's a great way to generate relationships and win friends. So that would probably take about 3 hours and definitely be an interesting conversation. On that note, Charlotte, come back in, tell us what you thought about the whole affair and what you take away.
Well, thank you. It was really nice to listen what you all talked about. It's correct that it's not how do you say it, concrete. It has to be about trust and safety. But I do think that it's really interesting to research the webbing, the social network webbing piece. And I also think that it's really nice just to talk with each other about what's going on. So the conversation cafe is a good start to just make conversation with each other and get to know each other about this topic. So I'll do some homework about the social network webbing. And I also liked the idea of the critical uncertainties, actually, because it's also a nice way to just look at the situation, how it's now. So yeah, I have some food for thought for a design. Thank you.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for Charlotte for giving our first help request. As you can see, we failed miserably in maintaining those time boxes. I'll take responsibility. I failed miserably. Let me take responsibility. I'm hosting this space. That gives us some amount of time to jump in on Eric's help request. Now that he's got a microphone, hopefully more or less working.
Testing.
Yeah.
I do have a question because Frederick and Beeplop, they ask, when do the cynic and optimist join? Are you?
Cynics and optimists are welcome in the consultation. So sorry if I didn't make that clear. Stay, consult with us, right? You have more than enough information, I'm sure. If you're in this call, you know something about hosting spaces and or working with people, I would imagine. So definitely lend your ideas, information, and insight into the consultation.
You mean now, or because I want to respect your time?
Now our bridge is passed for this one, so we'll move on to the next. But sorry if I didn't make that clear, Frederick. So Eric, what have you got for us?
I've got a real case scenario. There was a company here in the Netherlands with two Scrum teams, and they asked me to have a look at their setup. Main reason for that is they have humongous amounts of bugs. 50% of their work is fixing bugs. So I went in and I had a number of meetings with individuals, just basically interviews to find out what the situation was. And eventually I had enough information and I got a full day from the boss to work with the two teams to try to help them improve their Scrum process. The most important things I noticed was a product owner who was previously a programmer who did the whole preparation of the stories, and a guy who was like the major specialist and therefore the person who did all the testing outside the teams. Very much output minded. And that is basically the purpose of the workshop. Really teach the developers what Scrum is about, and make them realize how much power they have within the framework to try to help them, basically mobilize them to force a restructuring of the organization. Also important, everybody is on board in this company, so they have a lot of safety. They get a lot of room from the boss, and I think the frustration everybody has with the amount of bugs and the fact that they've tried all kinds of stuff and it hasn't worked is a very big motivator. Yeah. The teams, they're PHP developers, so they're generalists. They do everything themselves. There's no silos in the teams except for the testing person. Because of the focus on output, everybody is busy delivering stories. They take pride in it, and I felt that the whole idea of knowledge management is a bit absent. So they basically at the point that it's a startup which has been very focused on output, and they're at the moment they have to make the jump towards more result-driven work. Wow, that came out pretty well.
Clarifying questions.
You said that they didn't know anything about Scrum beforehand. Is that because they never got the training, or there was no one in-house who was like an agilist beforehand?
They had an IT manager who was interested in Agile, and they set up a kind of basically their own interpretation of Scrum. So at the simple level, it's Scrum. They have all the events, but they don't understand the principles behind it. What usually happens, they have a retro which is not very effective, so they decide to spend less time on it. The sprint review is they recorded videos of the functionality, so it's more of a quality assurance. So the typical patterns. They had a Scrum Master who worked there for a year, but it was really inexperienced and left a bit of a bad taste.
Another question, you're a consultant. So how long have you been in the system, and how much do they trust what you were saying? I mean, how far can you go?
Yes. I know the company for about 8 years. And on and off is basically some kind of like a friendship. During the interviews, I've been a programmer myself, so I can, I don't know, how would you call it? I can sort of go undercover and act like I'm a programmer. And I try to do my interviews in a very neutral way. So basically ask kind of neutral questions and see what comes out.
You said they were proud of their work, but also that they're really disappointed about the bugs. So what aspect of their work are they proud of?
It's a typical startup where they're really proud of what they do within the knowledge they have at the moment. So it's I noticed the lack of knowledge. So stuff like legacy, technical debt. They are aware of it, of the concept, but I don't really understand the impact it has. So within their expertise level, they're proud of the work, and the bugs, they don't understand it. And that's the frustration they feel.
Okay. And you also said that the testing function on the team was siloed. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, that's it's a very complex program they have, very complex software. And there's one guy who's worked there from the beginning, and he really understands the software. So basically everybody assumes that nobody has the necessary knowledge. He's the only person who can do the testing. And I think driven from a need for efficiency, they just accept the situation. And I think they lack the ownership. They don't understand the ownership aspect of it. How the having someone taking responsibility for the testing takes away the ownership from the team. Maybe adding to that, whenever the guy goes on holiday, then the team automatically takes over the testing, and it seems to be okay. So that begs the question, why don't you take it over completely?
How many in each team?
5 people.
Five in each.
Yeah.
And are they paid on output or are they paid on quality?
The boss is smart enough to not focus on that. But everybody is aware about the fact that they have this thing called the tempo, where they divide the story points by the amount of hours, and they look at it individually. And everybody keeps saying that it doesn't have any effect and stuff, but there are conversations when people drop below a certain level, and something that everybody is very aware about is the fact that there's a difference between the two teams, and everybody is worried about the team that's not doing so well. And they measure that with that tempo thing.
So it's tempo based on productivity.
Yeah, I'd say they don't have sprint goals. It's really just, this is the amount of stories we have, and we're going to deliver them all.
Speaking of, are we actually a team? That comes to mind as well. Is there any more clarifying questions before I notice myself already insinuating my judgment into the clarifying questions round?
I'd like to answer that, because they really it's surprisingly very much a team. I mean, even the two teams, they work together. They do a shared sprint planning. So that's the strange thing about this situation, that the safety, the team spirit is brilliant.
So is there any history that is worth mentioning about the reason why creating 2 teams in such a small organization and not staying with one team at the size of 10, which is doable?
That's a very good question. I have no idea. Should have asked that myself.
Awesome. Well, Eric, mute yourself, turn off your webcam, and we'll get to work. See if we can come up with some advice that's doable. So I think Eric said that he had 1 day's time of a workshop. Is that correct, Eric? Just to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn.
Yeah, 8 hours.
8 hours. All right, that's an ocean of opportunity, so to speak. So when you think about this challenge that Eric's brought us, what are the structures that jump out to your mind that might help us address this quality kerfuffle?
Yeah, I'm thinking this probably will not be only liberating structures. I think you would have to do some teaching here, is my guess, just to shape some of the context, some of the ideas behind Scrum and how it works. I don't think you can get around that. You could try to minimize that, but you do need to tell something. So it won't be all liberating structures, I think, to begin with. The other thing is where I would start here is probably looking at definitions of done, is my guess. To really look at, okay, considering that we want to deliver a complete product as a team, a working product, okay, what does that mean? And what does need to be in place for that? And have that discussion there. And for that, something like min-specs comes up for me. What else? Yeah, min-specs is a good one.
And how might we use min-specs to grab our definition of done?
Yeah, so min-specs, if people are familiar with it, it's basically you start individually. So you ask people, okay, individually write down everything that you think that needs to be done. In this case, then you think needs to be done in order to make this product, what we are releasing, a working product, something that could be released if we wanted it to. So then you combine people. I think you can combine it pretty well with a 1, 2, 4. I think if you want to do that as a substructure. So start individually, pair people up, combine the lists, and ask them to make that list bigger. Work together on that. Add pairs to quarters, same instruction, combine the lists. Again, try to make it bigger. And then the assignment is to look at that list and to strip everything away that can either be done in another way, can be combined, or is maybe not so relevant if you look at it. So really drill it down to the core essentials that you need to do. And that's then your min-spec basically to handle that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm thinking that Eric has an assumption that the problem is with this lonely writer tester, perhaps nearly a founder of the company, that needs to be the gateway for releasing the product. So if they were using TRIZ, how might we ensure to release as many bugs as we can in just one features? How would we do that? And that would make a lot of energy in the room, and hopefully they would also see the silliness of having only one person, and the person who knows the most to be like the gatekeeper down the pipeline, and not having all the quality built in the refinement and in the definition and done definition, ready acceptance criteria, et cetera, because that would also bring a lot of energy into the room.
Yeah, I think you can add that structure with the what, so what, now what.
Mm-hmm.
So start with the min-spec. No, what did you say? The TRIZ?
Yeah. TRIZ is interesting too. It's indeed fun to do. Yeah.
John, what do you got for us?
Just a thought. I heard kind of a conflicting thing in that they were proud of their work, but there's also this whole problem with bugs that they're very frustrated by. And I wonder if there's a is there a wicked questions session in there? Would that
Mm.
draw out something and help them put 2 and 2 together?
Yeah, could be an interesting approach.
Can you give me some more? We've got some cynics in the house, so can you help unpack wicked questions for them?
Okay. Well, disclaimer, I've never actually run a wicked question session, but the concept of a wicked question is that you've got 2 seemingly paradoxical elements in your situation, and like it seems like we either have to have this or we have to have that, and the wicked questions session is designed to help the group find a yes and solution. How can we have both this and that? What's the innovative stroke that we can put those 2 things together on?
Awesome, thank you. And then integrated autonomy would be more the answer portion. So wicked question is much more about generating the question, and then integrated autonomy is sort of that Venn diagram move that you're talking about of like, what's this stuff in the middle ground? Awesome, thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, one thing I'm also thinking about, it might be an interesting approach, maybe discovery and action dialogue. The reason why, because it kind of also directs people to think about making clear or having a clear picture on how to determine, looking at the way from how do we know something is present, which also helps then to think about, okay, how can we make sure that when we do stuff that we actually improve as well. But it could be something towards the end of this meeting where you have people more thinking into, okay, what kind of actions do we really need to take and how can we structure that? And who, for example, who would you need for that as well, in case you need somebody to do something. So, and that's kind of an interesting one as well, but probably more for towards the end of such a session.
I like it. One thing that also jumps out to me is eco-cycle planning, right?
Mm.
We have all this stuff that we're doing that's so output focused, right? Map all of that action to the eco-cycle and, tell us what you notice, right? Or are we maybe not putting enough time and energy? If we're putting all of this energy and moving stuff into maturity, maybe we're not putting enough time and energy into, as a group, into the birth and gestation portion. I would imagine, based on what Eric's description, is that if you were to do this with everybody has a different color Post-it, which might not be tenable with 10 people, but what I'd imagine is it sounds like a very waterfallish environment where there's a shit ton of handover. If there's a product owner doing all of the investigation, all of the birth and gestation is happening by the product owner, and then he's giving it over to the teams, and then they're handing it over to some tester, right? Just seeing, hey, oh, it looks like there's nobody who's actually going all the way through this thing. Just using that tool to visualize where our efforts are primarily focused and what we might want to do in response to that could be very helpful.
Yeah.
And I like the discovery action dialogue as well. Is there anything else that jumps out to folks? I think we got a good laundry list.
Yeah, one thing that when you mentioned eco-cycle planning, also immediately jumped to purpose to practice. Maybe a bit harder one. You would really need to define a purpose to it, but there's some quite interesting steps to it to talk about, okay, what principles do we adhere to, what kind of structure, what kind of practices. So I think that maybe eco-cycle planning might be better here, especially if you see a lot of handover stuff, but it is an interesting, could be an interesting approach as well.
And the
Yeah,
only thing,
I'm now thinking about this strategy not working thing. That's maybe not really every step will you have to apply, but you have a nice overview of all the things that are happening around the company. Like what are the chances and what are the you have to be careful about, and you also make some time for the wicked question and the well maybe and you can end with the eco cycle planning.
awesome. Strategy not working is a big one.
Yeah.
Strategy
for-
not working is definitely, you've got time to run through something like that. It focuses on these 6 questions, and whether you work through them in order or not, the 6 questions are around purpose. So what's the fundamental justification for the existence of our works? Context, what's happening around us that sort of demands creative change? Challenge, what paradoxical challenges are we must we face in order to make progress? Baseline, how are we starting honestly? Ambition, given our purpose, what seems possible now? And then your 6th sort of question in the sequence is, how are we around action and evaluation? So how are we acting our way towards the future, evaluating what is possible as we go? So you can approach those 6 questions in a lot of different ways. Just as simple as, effectively use the basic wrapper of discovery action dialogue, but these 6 questions instead of the discovery action dialogue questions instead. You could run a 1, 2, 4 all for each one of these questions, or you could look at a very specific liberating structure to answer each one of these questions. The determination for how about that is basically how much resolution, how much detail do you need for these questions. But yeah, that's for sure. Definitely, I am of the school that applies strategy not working to everything. So for sure.
That's sorry to interrupt. Is it a liberating structure? Because I'm trying to find it.
Strategy cannot working is a liberating structure in development. So similar to purpose to practice, it's much more of like a collection of structures in sort of in a meta structure, you would imagine. I'll put a visual to it in the Google Doc that is linked to, and that'll give you way more information than you could possibly want, but maybe.
Don't underestimate my curiosity.
So I think we have a good laundry list of different stuff that that Eric can put together in some way, functional or no. Is there any other structure before we drag him back in here that jumps out to us, or does that seem good enough for now, safe enough to get some feedback on? Going once, going twice. Eric, come back in. Tell us what you think.
Hi, nice to be back. Yeah, brilliant. I really very inspiring. I have one small question before Robert. Before you mentioned the purpose to practice, you discussed another liberating structure, but I missed the name. It was after
discovery action dialogue.
Ah,
That.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. I really liked the TRIZ and the DoD. Things I really hadn't thought about. The integrated autonomy. Yeah, brilliant. It's a pity I didn't have this session about a month ago, because I actually did the workshop 2 weeks ago. and now I'm thinking like, shit, missed opportunity.
There we go. The paradox has revealed itself. You know, to work back in time. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's a super relevant help request for a lot of folks. So thanks for bringing it into the space. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been this March 14th edition of the Wise Crowds Liberating Structureless Design call. I'll upload this bad boy to YouTube, and there should be a link on the meetup page that you registered for, whether that was for this event is posted on like 4 different meetup groups. So whichever one you're in, there should be a link to the video if you want to share it around or see what you missed or go back through. The doc, of course, has our notes as far as what structures we suggested. So if you want to go back and look through those, be my guest. John, I don't think you got a link to the doc. So if you want to hang out for a second, I'll give you the link to that. And without further ado, I would like to thank everybody for your time, attention, and energy, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Some form of exit music going on. Copy link. And in the chat. And John, on the second or third page of that doc, what you'll see is a sort of guest list, a guest book. If you want to put your name and email address in there, I'm in the midst of running an experiment, offering folks a badge of participation as an NFT, a non-fungible token. I don't know if you're hip to all of the things happening Web3. Well, there you go. I'm handing out POAPs if you want to get real specific about it. So leave your email address on that page, and we'll be happy to send you a participation badge out. And God only knows what that'll turn into one day.
Will do. Thanks, Jeremy.
Awesome. Thanks for showing up, man. See you around.
Nice to see you. Take care.
Well, there you have it. Get the hell out of here. I'm going to go pick up the kids. Good shiz.